Now, the United States, in that dreary cliche so beloved of its Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, is locked and loaded for further attacks on Iranian ships as the standoff in the Strait of Hormuz continues. 2 American-flagged vessels were escorted through by the U.S. Navy, but huge numbers of ships are still stuck. Iran promises to attack anyone trying to get through and says it has fired warning shots at a couple of U.S. warships. So, where are we really? Our man in Washington is, of course, Simon Marks. Simon, thank you very much indeed for joining us. There is no real sign of this ending, is there? This may be the first war to eventually come to a conclusion because everybody is so bored of it.
Yeah, I mean, there is no end in sight at all. And what we've seen here over the last couple of hours, Andrew, is the Trump administration, as the Americans like to put it, twisting itself up into a pretzel in order to avoid saying that the war is actually ongoing, that the ceasefire has failed, because they want to say that the ceasefire is holding in order to avoid the inexorability of a date with Congress, because Congress says the 60 days are up, Mr. President. You've got to come here and get authorization for your war. So we heard from Pete Hegseth today that the ceasefire is holding, even though the Americans yesterday fired on 7 or 8 Iranian speedboats that they say were attempting to break the US-imposed naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, even though a couple of weeks ago they lobbed missiles at the engine room of an Iranian vessel, blowing a hole in the side of it. They maintain with a straight face that the ceasefire is holding. And President Trump got very coy today, unusually, when he was asked what would result in the ceasefire obviously not holding, what would result in it being pierced. And he said, well, the Iranians know that. They know where the line is. And if they cross it, then, of course, the Americans are going to retaliate with force. But this is a political maneuver that he's engaged in here to avoid backing the idea that this war is still taking place, because otherwise he's got to go and get congressional approval, which he almost certainly would not be able to do.
Well, Simon, I'm really interested in this notion of the congressional deadline, because people haven't talked about it enough, I think. Does that give the Iranians really quite a useful opportunity to push things further? If they know that Trump is, as it were, up against that deadline, up against the wall, this gives them a good chance of changing things on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that the two things that impact Iranian behavior are the understanding that Congress is restive, and with each passing day, you know, we're 24 hours closer to America's midterm elections, and the possible nightmare that will entail for Republican candidates up and down the ballot. But the other thing, of course, that the Iranians will be painfully aware of is the rising price of petrol at the pumps here, as Americans are. And they know that the Strait of Hormuz is their ace in the hole. The more they can maintain efforts to control it, and they can block traffic from sailing through it, the greater the pain for Americans here, who already overwhelmingly oppose the war that the president now says is not really a war, and they should all be happy to pay higher gas prices to avoid nuclear annihilation.
Simon, you mentioned the midterms there, the first sort of really likely intimation of political mortality for the president. Unless, of course, he goes for an unconstitutional third term, and I gather there have been more words from him on that subject.
He was back, apparently joking, which is what we're always told he's doing when he references it, yesterday. He talked yesterday at an event about the possibility of him serving another 8 or 9 years in the presidency. I mean, the other thing that's interesting is to keep an eye on the social media account of one Donald Trump Jr., who has started just within the last 24 hours promulgating a new point of view video that he filmed of himself getting off Marine One and walking towards the White House at a time when the race to succeed Donald Trump is not a two-way race between J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. It's a three-way race if you talk to MAGA supporters, and that includes Donald Trump Jr. So who knows where all this leads?
They've just had a king in Washington, of course, Simon, so maybe this is the beginning of the apostolic or the royal succession or the imperial succession, bloodline. That's what America needs. I'm absolutely sure. Simon Marks, thank you very much indeed.